What happens when a calm, composed Hollywood star walks into a daytime talk show? And within minutes, the conversation takes a turn nobody in the room expected. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The cameras are already rolling inside the studio of The View. The audience is energized, clapping as the hosts settle into their seats. There's the usual buzz, coffee mugs on the table, papers shuffled, quick glances exchanged between co-hosts. It feels like a normal day. Then the introduction hits. Joining us today, you know him from action films, from drama, from pretty much everything. Please welcome Jeremy Renner. The audience erupts into applause as Jeremy walks out, smiling, relaxed, waving politely. He takes his seat, nodding at the panel. You can see he's comfortable. This isn't his first talk show. He leans slightly forward, hands clasped, ready to talk. "Thanks for having me," he says casually. "Of course," one host replies. "We're glad you're here." Everything starts smoothly. They talk about his latest project, a mix of action and emotional storytelling. Jeremy speaks in that grounded, thoughtful tone he's known for. "It's been a journey," he says. "Not just the film, but personally too. You start to see things differently over time." The audience nods along. It's warm, easy. Then Joy Behar leans in slightly, tilting her head with that familiar expression. Half curious, half skeptical. "Jeremy, you've had quite the career," she says. "But I want to ask you something, because a lot of people are talking about it." There's a subtle shift in the room. Jeremy glances at her, still smiling, but you can tell he's listening carefully now. "Sure," he replies. Joy continues, "There's been this perception, fair or not, that some of your recent comments about the industry, about fame, even about responsibility, they've rubbed people the wrong way." A few murmurs ripple through the audience. Jeremy's smile tightens just a bit. Not defensive, just more focused. "Well," he says, "I think sometimes things get taken out of context. I try to speak honestly, and that doesn't always land the way people expect." Joy doesn't pull back. "But don't you think," she says, cutting in slightly, "that when you have a platform like yours, there's a responsibility to be clearer? Because people listen to you, young people especially." Another host shifts in her seat, glancing between them. The energy is changing. Jeremy nods slowly. "I agree there's responsibility. Absolutely. But I also think there's room for nuance. Not everything has to be packaged perfectly." Joy raises an eyebrow. "Nuance is great, but clarity matters too, right?" A light chuckle comes from the audience, but it's cautious now. Jeremy leans back slightly, exhaling through his nose, still composed. "Clarity matters, yes. But so does authenticity. And sometimes authenticity isn't neat." There's a brief pause. Joy smiles, but it's not a soft smile. It's pointed. That sounds like a very actor answer. The audience reacts, some laughter, some ooh sounds. Jeremy lets out a small laugh, shaking his head. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just a human answer." That lands differently. You can feel the tension starting to build. Not explosive, not dramatic, but real. The kind that creeps in during live TV, when no one's quite sure where the conversation is heading next. Another host jumps in quickly, trying to balance things. "Let's talk about your recovery," she says. "You've been very open about your health and everything you went through." Jeremy visibly softens. "Yeah, that's been a big part of my life lately." The audience claps gently. "It changes your perspective," he continues. "You realize what actually matters. Family, time, just being present." Joy nods, but she doesn't let go of the earlier thread completely. "And does that experience," she asks, "change how you think about what you say publicly?" Jeremy pauses. This time, it's a longer pause. "Of course it does," he says finally. "Everything changes you. But I don't think it means you become silent. If anything, it makes you more honest." Joy leans forward again. "But honesty can be uncomfortable for people, right?" Jeremy meets her gaze directly now. "It can be, but that doesn't make it wrong." The audience reacts again, this time louder. Some clapping, some murmurs. One of the co-hosts quickly adds, "I think what he's saying is that people interpret things differently." Joy interrupts. "No, I get what he's saying. I'm just asking if he understands the impact." Jeremy nods, but there's a slight shift in his tone now, firmer. "I do understand the impact," he says. "But I also think people underestimate audiences. They're capable of understanding complexity." That line lands heavily. The room quiets for a second. Joy tilts her head again. "Or maybe," she says, "people just want accountability." There it is. That word hangs in the air. Jeremy doesn't respond immediately. He looks down briefly, then back up, choosing his words carefully. Accountability is important, he says. But it has to go both ways. Now the audience reacts louder, some applause, some surprised laughter. Joy's expression sharpens just slightly. What do you mean by that? Jeremy leans forward now, mirroring her posture. I mean, he says, we hold public figures accountable, which is fair. But sometimes there's no space for conversation anymore. It's just judgment. A co-host quietly says, that's a fair point. But Joy doesn't back down. Well, she says, when you're in the public eye, judgment comes with the territory. Jeremy nods. It does. But so should understanding. The tension is unmistakable now. The audience is fully engaged. No more casual laughter. People are leaning forward, watching closely. Joy folds her hands on the table. Understanding has to be earned. Jeremy replies without missing a beat. So does respect. That line hits hard. There's a mix of applause and audible reactions from the audience. Some impressed, some surprised at how direct it's getting. One of the hosts quickly laughs nervously. Okay, we're getting into it this morning. But neither Jeremy nor Joy is laughing. They're both composed, but fully locked into the conversation now. And you can feel it. This isn't just a casual interview anymore. Something deeper is unfolding. And it's only just getting started. There's a brief pause after that last exchange. Just long enough for the tension to settle into the room like something tangible. The audience isn't laughing anymore. A few scattered claps fade out, and now all eyes are on the table. Jeremy sits upright, hands lightly clasped, his expression calm but clearly more guarded than when he first walked out. Across from him, Joy holds her posture, chin slightly raised, as if she's weighing whether to push further or pivot. One of the co-hosts tries to ease things. I think this is actually a really important conversation, she says, glancing between them. Because it's not just about celebrities. It's about how we all communicate now. Jeremy nods politely. Exactly. But Joy doesn't let the moment soften too much. Right, she says, turning back to him. But Jeremy, you keep using words like conversation and understanding. And I get that. But from where I'm sitting, and from what a lot of viewers feel, it sometimes sounds like you're asking for more patience than you're willing to give. A ripple of reactions moves through the audience. Jeremy's eyebrows pull together slightly. Not confusion, more like he's trying to pinpoint exactly what she means. I'm not sure I follow, he says. Joy leans in just a little more. I'll be direct, she says. There have been moments, interviews, statements, where you've said things that people felt were dismissive. Not nuanced. Not complex. Just dismissive. The word lands heavier than the last. Jeremy exhales slowly, his fingers tapping once against the table before going still again. I think, he begins carefully, sometimes people hear what they expect to hear. Not necessarily what's being said. A few audience members react, some nodding, others shifting in their seats. Joy responds immediately. Or maybe they hear exactly what's being said, and they don't like it. A sharper reaction from the audience this time. A few claps. Jeremy tilts his head slightly, considering her. That's fair, he says. People don't have to like what I say. Then what's the issue? Joy shoots back. If people don't like it, they respond. That's the system. Jeremy leans forward again, his tone still controlled, but more deliberate now. The issue isn't disagreement, he says. It's when disagreement turns into assumption. When people decide who you are based on one sentence, one clip, one headline. Another host nods. That happens a lot, though. Not just to actors, to everyone online. Exactly, Jeremy says, seizing that moment. So the question becomes, are we actually listening to each other? Or are we just reacting? Joy crosses her arms loosely, not defensive, but firm. But Jeremy, listening goes both ways, she says. You're asking people to understand you, but are you really taking in why they're reacting the way they are? That question hangs for a second. Jeremy doesn't answer immediately this time. He looks down briefly, then back up, and when he speaks again, his tone shifts slightly, less guarded, more reflective. I do think about that, he says. More than people might assume. I read things. I hear feedback. I don't live in a bubble. Joy nods once. Okay. But, Jeremy continues, I also think there's a difference between feedback and projection. The audience reacts again, this time a mix of curiosity and tension. Joy raises an eyebrow. Projection. Yeah, Jeremy says. When people take their own experiences, their own frustrations, and place them onto someone else's words. Joy lets out a small laugh, but it's not amused, it's pointed. Or, she says, they recognize something in those words that feels real to them. Jeremy doesn't smile this time. Maybe, he says. But that doesn't automatically make their interpretation accurate. A louder reaction from the audience, some clapping, some audible, "oh," sounds. One of the co-hosts quickly interjects, sensing the rising intensity. "Let's not forget," she says, "this is something we all deal with, miscommunication, misunderstanding." Joy cuts in gently but firmly. "I'm not talking about miscommunication. I'm talking about impact." There's that word again. Impact. Jeremy leans back slightly, his jaw tightening just a bit. "Impact matters," he says. "I've said that. Then why does it sound like you're minimizing it?" Joy asks. The room goes quiet again. Jeremy looks directly at her now. No hesitation. "I'm not minimizing it," he says. "I'm questioning how it's being measured." That line draws a strong reaction. Applause from part of the audience, while others sit still, watching closely. Joy doesn't react right away. She studies him for a second. "How should it be measured then?" she asks. Jeremy pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Context," he says. "Consistency. Intent." Joy shakes her head slightly. "Intent is tricky. Everyone claims good intent." "True," Jeremy replies. "But ignoring intent entirely isn't the answer either." A co-host jumps in, trying to bridge the gap. "I think what he's saying is that there's a middle ground. We can acknowledge impact without completely dismissing intent." Joy turns to her. "But that middle ground often lets people off the hook." Jeremy responds quickly. "Or it allows room for growth." That line hits differently. There's a quieter reaction from the audience, less explosive, more thoughtful. Joy leans back in her chair now, exhaling slightly. "And do you think you've grown?" she asks. It's not aggressive, but it's direct. Jeremy nods slowly. "I do." "In what way?" she presses. Jeremy's expression softens again, just a little. "I listen more," he says. "I take more time before I speak. And I try to understand why something might land differently than I intended." Joy watches him closely. "But you still say it anyway," she says. Jeremy gives a small, almost resigned smile. "Sometimes, yeah." A few laughs from the audience, light but cautious. Joy tilts her head again. "So what's changed then?" Jeremy leans forward, his voice steady. "I think I'm more aware of the consequences," he says. "But I'm also more committed to being honest, even when it's uncomfortable." Joy nods slowly, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. "Uncomfortable for who?" she asks. Jeremy doesn't hesitate this time. "Everyone," he says. That answer lands with a mix of reactions, some applause, some murmurs. Another host jumps in, smiling slightly. "Okay, I feel like we're getting somewhere now," she says. "Because this is the kind of conversation people are having at home." Joy turns back to Jeremy, her tone softening just a fraction. "I don't think anyone's asking you to be silent," she says. "I think people are asking you to be mindful." Jeremy nods. "And I think that's fair." There's a brief moment where it feels like things might settle. But then Joy adds one more line. "The question is, are you as mindful as you think you are?" The audience reacts again, this time louder. Jeremy's expression shifts, just slightly, but enough to notice. Not anger, not frustration, but something closer to being challenged directly. And for the first time since the conversation started, he doesn't immediately respond. He just looks at her. And the silence that follows feels heavier than anything that's been said so far. Because now it's not just a discussion anymore. It's personal. And you can tell this next moment is going to matter. The silence stretches just a second longer than what feels comfortable for live television. Jeremy finally shifts in his seat, his fingers interlocking tighter for a moment before he relaxes them again. When he speaks, his tone is still controlled. But there's a noticeable firmness now, something more grounded. "I don't think anyone is ever as mindful as they think they are," he says. "That includes me. That includes you. That includes everyone." The audience reacts immediately, some clapping, some letting out a low, "oh." Joy doesn't smile this time. She nods once, slowly. "Fair enough," she says. "But we're not all in the same position. You have millions of people watching what you say, analyzing it, reacting to it. That's not the same as a regular conversation." Jeremy leans slightly forward again. "I agree. It's not the same. Then shouldn't the standard be higher?" Joy asks. "It should be thoughtful," Jeremy replies. "But higher can mean a lot of different things depending on who you ask." Joy responds quickly. "Higher means more careful. And careful can sometimes mean less honest," Jeremy says, without raising his voice. That line splits the audience. Some clap immediately, others hesitate. Joy turns slightly toward the other co-hosts, then back to him. So honesty comes at the expense of responsibility? No, Jeremy says, shaking his head. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a balance, and it's not always easy to find in real time, especially when everything you say is under a microscope. One of the co-hosts jumps in, trying to ground it. That's true, she says. People forget that these conversations happen live, and there's pressure. Joy cuts in again, but her tone isn't raised, it's sharper. But pressure doesn't excuse impact, she says. Jeremy nods once. And impact doesn't erase intent. There's another wave of reactions, stronger this time. A mix of applause and tension that fills the room. Joy exhales through her nose, leaning back slightly. You keep coming back to intent. Because it matters, Jeremy says. If someone is trying to engage honestly, that should count for something. Joy tilts her head. It counts, but it doesn't cancel out the effect. Jeremy pauses, then nods. I agree with that. That response catches the room slightly off guard. There's a brief, quieter reaction. Joy notices it too. Okay, she says. So we agree on that part. But, Jeremy continues, what I don't agree with is the idea that one moment defines everything. The audience leans in again. Joy narrows her eyes slightly, not in hostility, but in focus. You think people are defining you by one moment? I think it happens a lot, Jeremy says. Not just to me, to a lot of people. A clip goes viral, a quote gets pulled out, and suddenly that becomes the entire narrative. A co-host nods. That's definitely true in media. Joy responds. But sometimes that clip reflects something real. That's why it resonates. Jeremy doesn't dismiss that. Sometimes it does, he says. But sometimes it's incomplete. Joy leans forward again, her voice steady. So what do you want people to do? Ignore it. No, Jeremy says immediately. I want people to question it, to look deeper, to ask, is this the full picture? There's a thoughtful murmur from the audience. Joy folds her hands again on the table. That sounds ideal, but most people don't have time for that. They react to what they see. Jeremy nods. I know. So then isn't it on you, Joy continues, to make sure what they see is as clear as possible? Jeremy exhales, a small pause before he answers. I try, he says, but I'm not going to reduce everything I say into something perfectly polished just to avoid being misunderstood. A louder reaction now, applause from part of the audience, mixed with a few skeptical sounds. Joy's expression tightens slightly. But that's part of the job, isn't it? Jeremy shakes his head. No, my job is to be honest about my work, my experiences, my perspective. Not to make everything digestible in a way that removes all risk of disagreement. Joy lets out a short laugh. So disagreement is the goal? No, Jeremy says, his tone still even. But it's inevitable. And I don't think avoiding it should be the priority. There's a noticeable shift in the room now. The tension isn't just between them, it's pulling the entire panel into it. One of the co-hosts tries again to mediate. I think what Jeremy's getting at is that authenticity can sometimes be messy. Joy turns to her. And I'm saying that messiness has consequences. Jeremy responds before the co-host can continue. And I'm not denying that. Joy looks back at him. Then what are you denying? Jeremy pauses again. This time, he leans back, taking a breath before answering. I'm pushing back against the idea that if something lands badly, it automatically means it was wrong to say. The audience reacts strongly. This is one of the most direct statements he's made so far. Joy's eyes widen just slightly. That's a big statement. It is, Jeremy says. But I stand by it. A few claps break out, louder this time. Joy leans in, her tone now more pointed than at any previous moment. So you're saying, even if people are hurt, even if people feel dismissed, you might still think it was the right thing to say? The room goes very quiet. Jeremy doesn't rush his answer. I'm saying, he begins slowly, that feelings are valid, but they don't always determine truth. That line hits harder than anything before. The audience reacts immediately. Some loud applause, some audible gasps, a few voices murmuring in disagreement. One of the co-hosts raises her hand slightly, almost instinctively, like she's trying to steady the conversation. Okay, let's unpack that. But Joy doesn't let it pass. So whose truth are we talking about? She asks. Jeremy meets her gaze directly. Objective truth, he says. Joy shakes her head, a quick, almost incredulous motion. That's where people are going to push back, she says. Because what feels real to someone matters. It does, Jeremy agrees. But it's not the only thing that matters. The audience is fully divided now. You can hear it in the reactions. Some clapping, some silence, some shifting in seats. Joy leans back again, crossing her arms slightly. I think this is where we fundamentally disagree, she says. Jeremy nods. That's okay. But it's not just a disagreement, Joy adds. It's about how people experience what you say. And I'm listening to that, Jeremy says. I really am. But I'm also not going to pretend that every reaction defines the value of what was said. Another wave of reactions. One of the co-hosts finally steps in more firmly. All right, she says, her voice slightly louder, trying to regain control of the segment. This is clearly something we could talk about all day. A light ripple of laughter breaks the tension just a little. But I do think, she continues, that what we're seeing here is exactly what's happening everywhere right now. People trying to figure out how to communicate, how to disagree, how to listen. Joy nods, though her expression remains serious. Jeremy relaxes back into his chair slightly, but his focus hasn't shifted. The energy in the room is still charged, less explosive now, but heavier. Like something important has just been laid out, and no one's quite sure how to move past it. Joy looks back at Jeremy one more time. I appreciate you engaging, she says. Jeremy nods. I appreciate the questions. It sounds polite, but it doesn't feel resolved. Not even close. And as the cameras keep rolling, you can tell this conversation isn't over. Not for the audience, not for the panel, and definitely not for what's about to happen once the show goes to break. There's a brief pause as the tension lingers in the air, and for a moment, no one at the table speaks. Then one of the producers' voices can faintly be heard off camera, cueing the show forward. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. The audience claps, but it's not the usual upbeat applause. It's mixed, some energized, some uncertain, some clearly still processing what they just witnessed. The cameras cut, but the moment doesn't end. As soon as they go off air, the energy at the table shifts again. Less performative, but not exactly relaxed either. Jeremy leans back slightly in his chair, exhaling, rubbing his hands together once like he's releasing tension. Joy adjusts her posture, glancing down at her notes, then back up at him. For a second, neither of them says anything. Then Jeremy breaks it. That got deeper than I expected, he says, with a small, controlled smile. Joy lets out a short breath, almost a laugh, but it's measured. Well, she says, that's what happens here. One of the co-hosts quickly leans in. Hey, that was a real conversation, she says. That's not a bad thing. Jeremy nods. I agree. Joy looks at him, her tone less sharp now, but still direct. I wasn't trying to come at you, she says. I hope you know that. Jeremy meets her gaze. I didn't take it that way, he replies. You were asking real questions. There's a slight pause, then Joy nods once. Good. Another host chimes in, trying to lighten the mood. Well, the audience definitely got their money's worth today, she jokes. A few people in the audience laugh, some clapping again, this time a bit more relaxed. But even off camera, you can tell something meaningful just happened. Not fully resolved, not neatly wrapped up, but real. Within seconds, production signals them. They're about to go live again. Back in 5, 4, 3. The cameras come back on, and instantly, the energy shifts back into broadcast mode. Welcome back, one of the hosts says with a practiced smile. We're here with Jeremy Renner, and we've been having quite the conversation this morning. A light ripple of laughter from the audience. Joy glances at Jeremy briefly, then back at the camera. Yes, we have, she says. The tone is calmer now, more controlled. The segment moves into safer territory. They touch briefly on Jeremy's upcoming projects again, his work behind the scenes, even a few lighter moments about his daily routine. Jeremy smiles more easily now, answering with shorter, more relaxed responses. Yeah, I've been spending a lot more time at home, he says at one point. Just focusing on what matters. The audience responds warmly. But the earlier tension hasn't disappeared. It's just settled beneath the surface. As the segment wraps up, one of the hosts turns to Jeremy. Thank you for being here, and for being willing to have that conversation, she says. Jeremy nods. Thanks for having me. Joy adds, and for taking the questions. Jeremy gives a small smile. Of course. The audience applauds, louder this time, more unified. Whatever side they leaned on earlier, there's a shared sense that they witnessed something genuine. All right, we'll be right back, the host says. And just like that, the segment ends. But outside the studio, that's where things really begin. Within minutes of the episode airing, clips start circulating online from The View. Short segments, some only a few seconds long, begin popping up across social media. One clip focuses on Jeremy saying, "Feelings are valid, but they don't always determine truth." Another highlights Joy's response, "Impact matters." The internet does what it always does. It picks sides. Comments flood in. Some users praise Jeremy for staying calm under pressure, calling him measured, thoughtful, and unapologetically honest. Others criticize him, saying he came across as dismissive or out of touch. At the same time, Joy Behar trends as well. Supporters say she asked the questions that needed to be asked, that she held him accountable in a way many hosts wouldn't. Critics argue she pushed too hard, that she didn't allow enough space for nuance. Clips rack up thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions of views. Reaction videos start appearing. Commentary channels break down every moment, the pauses, the tone shifts, the exact wording. Did Jeremy Renner just challenge the entire idea of public accountability? Was Joy Behar too aggressive, or exactly right? The debate spreads far beyond the show. Back at the studio, after filming wraps completely, things are quieter. Jeremy is seen speaking briefly with a few crew members, shaking hands, thanking people. He exchanges a few more words with the panel. Short, polite, professional. No dramatic exit. No visible hostility. Just a lingering sense that something significant happened. Joy, meanwhile, is seen talking with producers, going over notes, already preparing for the next show. For her, this is part of the job, but even she seems a bit more reflective than usual. Later that day, neither Jeremy nor Joy posts directly about the exchange. No immediate statements. No clarifications, which only fuels the conversation more. Because now people are left to interpret it on their own. And that's where the discussion keeps growing. Some viewers say it was one of the most real conversations they've seen on daytime television in a long time. No scripts, no filters, just two people with different perspectives trying to hold their ground. Others say it highlighted exactly what's broken in public discourse, talking past each other instead of truly connecting. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. It was impossible to ignore. And that's what keeps it trending. Clips continue to circulate for days. Think pieces are written. Podcasts pick it up. Even other talk shows reference it, asking their own guests similar questions about accountability, intent, and public responsibility. What started as a routine interview turned into something much bigger. Not a shouting match, not a meltdown, but a real, uncomfortable, thought-provoking exchange that people can't stop talking about. And that's the kind of moment that sticks. So now it's your turn. What did you think about this clash between Jeremy Renner and Joy Behar? Was Jeremy right about honesty and intent? Or did Joy make the stronger point about impact and accountability? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.